In this lesson, we'll be discussing how to give components sizes. We'll discuss how to make components use all available space, and we'll also discuss some ways to make sure that components that should scroll do scroll, and components that should not scroll do not scroll. So to start off, let's draw ourselves a little design that we'll build for this lesson. We'll do a fairly common design that many web pages use. Just imagine this is our browser. We'll have a top bar at the top, a sidebar on the side, and then a main content area here that scrolls. So to start off, already have our single page container over there. The direction is vertical because we have this one at the top and this one at the bottom. So let's start adding our child widgets. There's the top one, which we'll use for the toolbar. There's the bottom one. This one will be horizontal, and it'll house these two. So another two containers inside it. Now to test our sizing, it's always a good idea to give colors to your components, just so you can see what's happening, especially because you don't have content yet. So let's give this one a background color of black. This sidebar will give a background color of red. And the main content area will do orange. So right off the bat, if you load this, you won't see anything in your browser. This is because components will only stretch, if they don't have sizes already, they'll only stretch and become larger and visible once they do have content. So to force that, we need to start giving static sizes to components where applicable. So the first thing we'll do is let's give a height to this component over here. Our top toolbar, we don't need to specify width because normally components inside a container will take up all available space on the cross axis. So the outside container, our single page container, is vertical, meaning that components will automatically use up all the width inside a vertical space. So for this one, let's give it a height. Now we have various ways in which we can do this. We can give it a static height using a pixel value. Let's do 100px. Now when we refresh, we should see our top toolbar, which is 100 pixels high. We can also do percentages, 50%. Percentage values relate to their parent components. So in this case, 50% means 50% of the height of this parent, which is a single page component, obviously. If this actually had a height of, let's say, 200 pixels, then the height would just be 100 pixels for the child, which uses 50%. Let's just make this actually render height. We'll also need to specify the width because it isn't single page anymore. There we go. Now we see this 100 pixels, which is in turn 50% of its parent, being this one. Let's just go back to the single page. All right. Something else you can do is you can use calculations, CSS calculations, but we won't discuss that in this lesson. So let's move this back to 100 pixels. Now let's do the same for the sidebar. So our sidebar is, we see this one over there, and this one we want to use 50, or let's make it, I guess, 200 pixels. So this red one width of 200 pixels. Now we don't see this one because it has a height of 200 pixels, but sorry, width of 200 pixels, but it doesn't have a height yet. That's because it's inside this component which doesn't have a height, and this one doesn't have a height because it doesn't have any content with any let's call it height space. We do have something that has a width, but nothing that has a height yet. So to do this properly, we need to start using the flex property. And the flex property instructs a component to use up all remaining space on the axis in which it resides. So because we are now looking at this component over there, this container, this one already has a height. If we specify a flex property for this one, it'll use up all remaining space on the vertical axis. So there we see our sidebar because our other component finally has height. If we didn't specify a width for this one right off the bat, and rather gave a size to this, the background color to this one, which is a good way to work if you're new to this kind of layout strategy. So let's make this one at the bottom green. Then refreshing the browser would have indicated to us that we can't see this one yet, which would have hinted us in the direction of the flex property, so that we can see our bottom component, from where we know that we can now specify width for this one, because it's inside a component that does have a size already because of the flexing. Alright, and the next thing we'll do is make sure this orange one has size. Again, we'll use the flex property because it needs to use all the remaining space horizontally. And lastly, we can add some content to it to make it scroll. To do this, I'm going to remove the background color from here. I'm going to add another container inside it just to simulate content. I'll give it a height of, let's start small, 500 pixels. Give it a background color of blue so we can see it. So there we see our content being indicated by a blue container for now, and it isn't overflowing yet. If we make this larger, we'll see that it does scroll properly, meaning we don't lose focus of the top toolbar or the side toolbar because our flexing is set up properly. This won't always be the case. In some cases, you'll have built a dashboard that you didn't expect to overflow at some stage, meaning you'll have to go through all the layers of containers and figure out where your flexing has gone wrong. As long as you use flex in the right places, then the flex properties will drill in to the level you need, and just the component you need to overflow will overflow. In this case, meaning that we have our height set up for this one and flex there, and then we have our flex set up over here. So there's our two flexing spaces. But because this one is inside a space that flexes vertically like this, it can't grow any larger like this and force the page to grow, because the page is specified by the two outer levels. The page height is specified by the two outer levels, being this one that has a height, this one that flexes. So anything that happens inside won't cause the page to flex. There are situations where you have so many nested containers and components having certain sizes, where it becomes difficult to ensure your flexing is correct. An easy way to correct that is to add overflow to components, telling the component that it shouldn't grow, it should instead just have a scroll bar. So we do that by, let's say we had to do it on this one over here, which is the parent of that very big blue content. We can specify overflow true because it's false by default. When Opus sees this, it'll instruct the component to, instead of growing bigger to house all its content, it'll just overflow, adding scroll bars to the side, as we do see now here already.